Oh, I do not know if you can see me or properly hear me, but I am traveling cross country. Let me see if they'll shed some light. I am traveling cross country right now. I'm going from rest stop to rest stop. It's actually my first time really driving on the highway, period. So it's a bit of an interesting adventure. I'm probably gonna do a live stream in a few minutes. But this is pretty, it's not so scary driving at night on the highway. Let's see. Let's see, should I have set this higher? Oh well. Let me see, can I look the other way? So I'm at a rest stop. I don't know if you can see. GPS is in the way. So you got your big rig trucks. And over here you have little itty bitty cars. And all the way down there, you have someone's boat. Yeah, someone's driving their boat across country. Oh, I forgot to do the intro. This is a channel seeking my creator. Name's Andrew, if you're asking. At one time I thought, I should just keep it private, keep as much as possible private, but the people or things that you don't want to have your information, they probably already have it 6 different ways to the end of the week. So the year is 2020. The time is around June. Is just before June, May to June. And the big CV, or the big distraction of the year for 2020. And I'm not talking about a curriculum vitae. If anyone in the future sees this video and what's the CV? What's the big distraction of 2020? And they do research, then it shouldn't really be too hard to find, unless they just wipe it from the historical records. So I personally don't think there's any virus period, because if there was, people would actually be dying. Now, there are times when people are dying, even in massive numbers, and you don't know about it because you either don't read, which is true for most of the population, or you don't see it on the news because they don't put it on the news. They don't put it on the 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock news, so you don't know it exists. Yeah, which is a little sad. I forgot to look at the camera because it looks odd if I look at myself on the screen. But if I look at the camera, it's like I'm looking directly at you. Anyway, I'm traveling across country to see if this new location I was looking at is any good of a place to live in. I have a Jeep now. I know. I was trying to find a car in New York, and what would you guess? All the dealerships, they jerk you around, they make you wait a super long time. But guess what? You go online, you can get a car in 30 minutes, finance, or pay for it out of pocket, or lease it, whichever you want. 30 minutes, it's done. I got a car for its slight off-road abilities and slight space in the back. But honestly, I'm telling you, just go with a Ford. With a nice big old Ford with lots of trunk space that's high off the ground. You can't go wrong there. It also has a hitch and it's super tough. Go with a nice big Ford. Alright? I should have just went with a Ford. If I can trade in this beautiful Jeep I have, I'll do it if I can get a Ford for it. A really big Ford that's robust and sturdy. I'm not knocking the Jeep. It can go off-road pretty well. Almost each and every one of them. But there are Jeeps, and then there are Jeeps. Yeah, this is salsa water I'm drinking. I don't even know what I'll title this video. Um, anyway, I'm traveling across country. I already went to Pennsylvania. It's actually not that different from New York, except there's like shit everywhere. That is a big plus. You can't walk around barefoot in New York. Not because of the glass, it's because of the shit. And sometimes I'm walking around New York and I was like, I just wish I could earth. And then I see like this really big pile of shit and I think that could not have come from a dog. I'm gonna be honest with you. Pennsylvania has slightly less shit than New York, which is pretty good. But when I was over there, the cell phone service for T-Mobile was down. So I couldn't get any Wi-Fi. I couldn't use my data, not Wi-Fi. I could use Wi-Fi, but I couldn't access any data, any cell phone data. Cell phone data is slightly different from Wi-Fi. It's the Wi-Fi that the cell phone company provides. So Pennsylvania was okay, but I'm gonna go way across country. See if I can get a rental space and get a spot and find a job and see what it's like for a few months. Because you could look online and study the per capita income, how taxes are done in a state, what are the different amenities of a state, and those are very important things. But it doesn't, if you don't actually know what it's going to be like to live there, that's also a very, very important factor. Now, as I said earlier, I don't think there is a CV, because I will tell you something. If you are a person who reads, this is for people who read and for people who like to read, which will exclude 80 to 90% of everyone who probably watches this video. I'm sorry. Everyone in the world. I'll just go that far. Everyone in the world. 80 to 90% of the people. If you read, then you will know that the CV is just the flu. It's the flu. It is a bioengineered flu from a lab somewhere. And I say this because viruses take hundreds of years to mutate so that they are able to jump from animal to human and back and forth. If viruses could do what the CV is doing right now, then humanity would have been wiped out along with most other multicellular organisms on the planet, because viruses would have just mutated and they would have annihilated the majority of creatures on this planet. Viruses usually take a very, very long time to evolve, and they usually live in coexistence with the host, meaning that a virus generally doesn't kill the host. It usually tries to coexist with them, sort of like diseases like cancer. Usually it takes a long time for cancer to kill the host, but it eventually does. It just does it slowly. For other diseases, that's usually what happens. The disease will burn itself out and spread itself to a new host, usually without killing the original host. But if the virus is left unchecked, the virus will kill the host. Usually, viruses try to not kill their host. Oh, it looks like no, just a truck driver getting out of his truck. Anyway, the thing about this is that they're saying that the CV, is doing all these mutations. It's jumping from this to this, and it's utter bullshit. I just think it's a power grab by politicians. I do not know for what and for why exactly, but politicians and people who are high up in the world, they are kind of pragmatic, and they're also kind of lazy. They're not going to spend a whole lot of money and power to do things in certain regards, but they are willing to wait decades to generations to accomplish a goal or task. They're not really the type of people just to throw money away for no good reason. And right now, they are essentially killing the world's economy. So, you know, the world's economy is being killed unless we find like a brand new power source, or some sort of agreement is formed between different nations. The world economy is pretty much dead. I don't know what exactly is going to happen in the future, but right now, a lot of the first world nations, they are tanking their economies. Maybe for the exception of Russia and China. They've been on a steady path to repairing their economies. Anyway, aside from that, getting back to why the controllers and trendsetters of society are just tanking everything. I think something bad is coming, and they decided that this is their way to deal with it. Now, a lot of people are thinking, oh, the government has the power to control the weather. The government has the power to do all these things. I don't think the government has all of that power. I'm going to be honest with you. Maybe they have the power to induce rain. Maybe they have the power to induce storms, but they're not going to destroy their own infrastructure. You are seen as their livestock. Now, I know many people are offended by that, but many of you have never had livestock. You don't understand the mindset of a farmer or a cattle rancher or someone who has a herd of animals. When you have a herd of animals, it's not the same thing as having a pet. You might treat them like pets to a certain extent, but it's very different. You are trying to keep those animals alive because they work for you and they're producing you a resource. You technically don't go around abusing the creature that is producing your resource for you. So for these government officials and people at the very tippity top of society to just turn around and say, we're going to just kill off our herd of cows because we're mean jerks, doesn't make sense. And it doesn't seem to fit with the pattern of the way they do things. Now, are they sadistic and cruel because they're willing to basically betray and destroy the evolutionary path, or or the advancement of their own species? Like, yeah, that's pretty crazy from the outset, but they're acting like farmers to an extent. They're using the herd or the majority of the population to produce resources for them, and it wouldn't destroy them unless something bad was coming, something real bad that they couldn't control. But what they can do is they can act like they are the ones in control, right? All of a sudden people getting sick, well, we'll blame it on the government or a government. We'll try to be real vague about it. Oh, there's a food shortage, we'll try to blame it on something else and make it look like it's a government action rather than just a random act of God. People are actually more afraid of random acts of God or random chaotic events or things happening out of the blue that you don't understand, that seem mysterious, rather than the government being a jerk, rather than the government having a clandestine plan that's super convoluted and goes against their very interests to make money off of the people. But sometimes there are forces outside of government that just destroy stuff. Now, if it's a force outside of the government, I think things could be really bad. I mean, I think they could be so bad that you can be wondering, like, oh my goodness, government knew all of this. That's why in the UN papers, they're pushing for people to eat bugs. Because something so bad is going to happen in the future. You can't farm. You can't have cows, sheep, and horses probably for a long time, or maybe for a short time. So we got to prepare people to eat bugs. Things are going to be so bad at a point in the future that you can't have families or people be together for whatever reason. So we're going to particularly separate families. If you ever watched one of the older Superman movies, there was a time where Zod came in and he was putting the human people in camps. and he put the people in camps by their gender, by their age, and I think by other factors. So all the men was in one camp, all the women was in one camp, all the children in one camp, and each camp was broken up by age and health level. So I think that's also part of what's going to happen. I think something bad is going to happen at some point in the future, and they're going to say, hey, we have to take these extreme survival measures, but government can't let the cat out of the bag. Like, oh yeah, we knew this was going to happen 200 to 150 years ago. You know, that's why in documents like Rex 84, or some people like to call it the King Alfred Plan, we went with world model number 3, where everything is destroyed, and you know, we had to just grease the people. We didn't want to survive because we were afraid they would challenge our power and authority at the very last second and wipe out the current people in government power. So we went with war model number 3, where everything's destroyed and people are basically stripped of their human rights, because when you are in a true crisis, when you are in a true disaster, you kind of don't care about your civil liberties and human rights. Those things really aren't the first thing. The first thing you care about is where you have food, shelter, and water, whether some form of order can be established, and other things. So I'm not advocating for government here. I'm saying, like, hey, look at all these different sources of people. The guys who believe in aliens, something bad is coming. The guys who believe in aliens, something bad is coming, right? And they kind of blame it on government. The people who read old government documents, everything the government said they were going to do, they're doing it. Even though it kind of messes up their ability to rake in the trillions of dollars every year. People who are studying finance, same thing. People who study society from the angle of culture and media, the same problem. Hey, we're going in the direction of feminism controlling everything, and we're kind of seeing slowly, bit by bit, every version of feminism doesn't work. Okay. Let's look at communism. This whole problem with communism just doesn't work, and communism is really for the rank and file people, they believe in equality and progressiveness, and it really doesn't work, because basic poor people, I'm talking about the poor people who are progressives, they like to compete with each other, and they like to compete with people who are better, who have more than them. And if you like to compete, it means you want to be different. The guy who's number 1 is different from the guy who's number 2 because he was faster or stronger, or he was able to produce more. People, to an extent, they like to compete and do better. If it was under progressivism, then you can't compete, you can't do better. Everyone has to get the same in some shape or format. You have to decide what shape or format is, because if it's in your form of your paycheck, someone's not going to be happy. I'm going to tell you, it's not just the rich people, the poor people too. We thought we'd have more. Oh well, I'm not able to mock them right now. I'm not able to mock the rich or the poor at the moment. But you have people studying culture and politics, the different not the different mindsets, the different needs people have politically, or the different goals or biases people have politically. These things are now finally playing out, and it's going to a point where some countries are going towards communism, and communism does not work for economics. It does not work for producing any sort of resources. If you were a small tribal culture, or a mid-sized tribal culture, or a large tribal culture, then yeah, communism can work. But it can't work for other forms of societies. It can't work for democracy. It can't work for a communist nation. It can't even work for a monarchy. Because even then, monarchies realize, hey, if you want people to actually work, you have to let them own and keep some of their property. Even people who study laws have realized, hey, We started out with a constitution that says you either have rights given to you by government, or you have rights that the government says the government doesn't give you rights. It protects your rights that you inherently have. Sometimes they attribute your rights as to coming from God, but I sometimes attribute your rights as to a choice that you can personally make and that you have personal responsibility for, which is why I say your rights are pretty much only as defended up to the point where you're willing to die or kill for them. And government knows this, and if they know you're not gonna go and kill or fight them, then they don't care. It's like this whole, like, look at the situation in America where some of the conservative white people's like, they don't respect our rights anymore, or kind of like for black people, they don't respect our rights anymore. Well, you show them that you're not willing to protest properly. Let's put it that way. In France, when Muslims protest, they just murder people and they start a mini civil war or riot. They're willing to fight and kill for the rights they believe, for the choices they believe they should make. If you're not willing to go that far, then government really doesn't care too much when they're ready to take your rights away. So when it comes to that aspect of people who study law and they realize that, hey, the government is writing all these laws that kind of take all our rights away. Soldiers don't have freedoms anymore. They technically belong to the government. Okay, that it's a trade-off. All right, let's move on to the next one. Mothers, well, a woman really never had rights because for good reasons. You can look into almost the majority cultures, and why is that? Because they're not the ones doing the heavy lifting. Also, when you have rights, you have to be willing to fight for them and die for them, and you have to be willing to be the major contributor to the society, or you have to be willing to contribute to the society. I'm not saying anything bad against women, but if you're not contributing to the society, you really shouldn't have rights, and you really shouldn't be deciding politically what goes on. It's like being in your parents' house and you're a kid and you don't pay rent, or you don't buy the groceries, or you don't pay any of the utilities. Do you really deserve to have a say? No, you're the kid. It doesn't matter if you're 10 years old or 50 years old. It's about how much you contribute. So when it comes to society on the larger whole, people really aren't able to contribute, and the laws have been rewritten to state the regular working man has no rights. All your rights, like right to labor, unions have been busted a long time ago. They've been broken up into itty bitty pieces. Your civil liberties are slowly being eroded away. Basically your right to speak out, but if you belong to certain ethnic groups, you never had those rights to begin with. So, and and a whole lot of ethnic groups out there, they fought real hard tooth and nail just to be heard. You gotta wonder, like, at the end of the day, well, who are you trying to speak to? Are you trying to speak to the people who are beating you over the head, violating your right, when you should just be fighting them, right? Someone's hitting you over the head, politically, or physically. You're trying to argue that you should have the free speech to tell them to stop hitting you. Like, sometimes when I think about stuff, it's like, in theory that seems sound, but when you look at it from a practical perspective, it's like you're doing things in reverse. I'm done with my rambling. It is probably 2:30 in the morning. I'm going to get back on the road and start driving. Maybe I'll do a little live streaming. I should just put I wish I should have put my GPS somewhere else on the screen. Oh well, lost chances. All right, goodbye.